The blood fever was gone. My erection was gone. Didn't need to like ponfar anything anymore. Like,
Yeah.
I was good. I guess that all turned out great.
Yes.
Captain's Pod, stardate 190335.1. Welcome aboard the Starship's Enterprise, and thank you for joining us as we take a brief shore leave from the world of CinemaSins to explore the universe of Star Trek. I'm your Captain Ian Whittington, and with me as always, she's made me reconsider the command structure on this ship. It's Ambassador Deneé.
Yeah, I pretty much make people rethink things all the time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much.
That is a reference to a very emotional moment that I think would have hit you like a ton of bricks on last week's episode. Because Riker is hiding a secret, and Picard says, if you're not going to tell me what this secret is, I will just have to trust that you have the ship's best interest at heart. And if I find that that trust is misplaced, I will have to reconsider the command structure on this ship. And Riker's face just looks like a puppy that's been told off for pooping in the bedroom. And I think that would have hit you. That's the moment I think would have hit you hardest last week.
Okay, but did he poop in the bathroom or something?
Oh, he shit the bed pretty hard. Yeah, he shit the bed pretty hard.
That's always awkward when you shit a bed and then you hide it, and then your captain says, I trust that it's not a big enough secret that I'm going to have to rethink who.
I'm just imagining Riker as a Labrador to the captain. He is Captain Picard's Labrador.
No.
Or like, no, not a Labrador.
No,
what is he?
I think he's probably more
like a bulldog.
The first one that comes to mind is a Doberman pinscher, but Dobermans are usually thought of as like more like kind of aggressive.
Yeah, he does have some aggressiveness to him.
But I feel like they also know that they're like super sexy dogs.
I mean, that definition 100% fits Riker.
So they know it.
Yeah.
And they're sleek, but they're also big.
I don't know if he's sleek, though. He's very hairy.
I'm not talking about physically. I'm talking about just his personality.
A sleek personality? What is a sleek personality?
Like kind of sly.
Well, that wraps up our first ever segment of Star Trek characters as dogs. It's a segment that needs to continue.
Okay, let's do one a week.
Let's do one of those a week. That's amazing. Well, this week...
Can't wait to do Deanna Troi.
Oh. I bet you can't. She's a Labradoodle. No, she's not a Labradoodle.
No, she's not.
She's a doodle of some sort just because of that. Stop next week. Tune in next week for what Deanna is as a pupper. So this week we continue our ongoing theme of fan favorite episodes. This was submitted by Josh Zero, and it will make, I know, a large portion of you very happy that we're going to be doing an episode of TOS, and we're going to be doing season 2, episode 1, Amok Time. Now, from the title, Amok Time, Ambassador, give me one prediction for what you think this episode is about.
I mean, time travel goes a bit squiffy. It has to be.
Yep, time travel goes a bit squiffy. We will lock that in as your most accurate prediction to date. We're going to head over to the holodeck to watch the episode. We'll meet you in 10 Forward for a full debrief. Brah! Due to be out.
Is it that one?
Welcome to 10 Forward, the part of the show where we grab something from the replicator and share our immediate thoughts and feelings on the episode we just watched. Most important question first, what would you like from the replicator, Ambassador?
I want soup that has been scraped off of a wall, please.
No, I'll take a fresh bowl of plomeek soup. Plomeek soup, lovingly prepared by the lovely Majel Barrett. Give us a synopsis.
Oh, I forgot I was doing that. Do you make your guests do a synopsis when I'm not around? Just curious.
Yeah, no, I did it to Daniel last week and he was not ready. I gave him all of the prep notes, but I didn't tell him he was doing the synopsis. And he went, oh, okay. He did great. The best synopsis we've ever had.
Shit.
In 3 years of doing the show. It was incredible.
In this episode, we find out that Spock is vulnerable.
I thought you were going to say we find out that he's Vulcan. Well,
True.
Ambassador, sorry to break it to you.
He's been faking it for so long.
Right.
Finally, this episode, it's confirmed. I'm guessing, I don't know how this aired, but in this episode, we learn that the Vulcans suppress their emotions And so there's a moment when they get this crazed fever and they have to return home like salmon swim upstream to find their love, only to discover that Spock has found love with a total bitch.
Oh, I mean, a logical decision logically arrived at, I would say.
I don't
think
know.
she's
We
very
technically, I don't think,
pragmatic.
yeah, we might not be able to fault her, but we certainly don't like her. Oh, maybe a little bit. Okay, we like her a little bit. I know this strange new. I've got so many thoughts.
There's so many thoughts. I do want to say, I want to ask a quick question first, though. You said you don't know how this aired. What do you mean?
Like, I don't know if we knew some of these things about, like, that they have. Is this the first
no.
time?
This is the first time we've seen a Vulcan that isn't Spock.
Okay.
They opened season 2.
Shit.
Yeah, they opened season 2 with a lore dump of an episode. I think they must have realized, wow, people fucking love Spock. They're going nuts for this man. And then just opened hard with loads of Vulcan lore and a ton of Vulcans. Yeah, first time we've seen a Vulcan that isn't Spock.
Okay. Well, in this episode, not only do we discover that Vulcans have emotion, but they have a lot of emotion.
Yes.
They have a scary amount. There's fevered blood. There's fever lust. There's murder. There's death.
Yeah,
there's
murder.
killing of best friends. There's confusion about what is and is not considered to be bitch mode.
Right. Literal murder boners.
Yeah. And then all is well because it was a neurotoxin all along.
Mm-hmm, yeah. As a lot of you know, we watched these episodes together first. What was your journey? How do you feel about this episode? What's in your head right now? Because it is a weird episode.
I loved it. I mean, I find that TOS is something that when I sit down to watch it, I'm like, okay, we'll watch TOS.
Settle down. Let's get into the slow roll.
And then it gets started, and I always end up really liking it, which is so great to be able to say. The pacing is always a bit different. I don't know that I was lost. There's a couple things that threw me off. Lines that I don't understand why. Okay, you know how like some friends will watch a show together and then they just pick up some random saying back and forth together?
Yeah.
Like it kind of becomes like an inside joke.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You end up with your own language.
Yeah. So I think this episode will have one of those, and I'm gonna ask that we try to do this together, like me and
absolutely.
you.
Okay. Can I guess what the line is?
You sure can.
I haven't heard a word you said. Is that what it is?
No, but that's the second one.
I want that to be it. Like when we share something really embarrassing, it's just full eye contact. I haven't heard a word you said, and then just leave.
Man. That just threw me off because there's this scene where Captain Kirk is learning from Spock the truth, and Spock has finally decided to say like what is really going on.
Big moment.
And the idea is that it's like off the record. Which after they've been talking back and forth for a bit, I guess I forgot that. So suddenly at the very end, he's like, I haven't heard a word you said. And he walked off and I thought, well, what a fucking asshole. But then I forgot.
I love this. It's not exaggerating. Today literally thought, and I want to be inside your brain trying to process that because that would be such like a bizarre thing to put into a TV show. Just end scene. I didn't hear any of that. Leave. Like no repetition, nothing. It's so
I think
great.
the part of it is because TOS is so unique to me that we don't watch a lot of it. That could just be a Kirk thing. He's just like, I don't know what you said. I'm going to go do my own thing.
I'm so bored I switched off. Yeah, I'm leaving. Whatever. We'll go to Vulcan just so I don't have to talk to you anymore.
You pull a Kirk, which can mean so many different things. But in this case, it's just you've been listening to someone talk for a long time and then you're just done.
Yeah, I'm out. Finished.
No, the back and forth was it's about biology. Oh.
Biology?
Yeah, biology.
As in biology?
As in Vulcan. Vulcan biology? Oh, Vulcan biology. And they just literally and I'm sitting here going, what are we doing here, guys?
What are we talking about?
I think it's because the discomfort of the subject at that time is mating. So we switch over to birds and bees and salmon pretty quickly after that.
So when did you twig the reason that this is being so reluctantly delivered was because it's about sex and reproduction? Because if that doesn't twig, it is an interminably awkward and drawn out back and forth of fucking hell, Spock, tell us what's wrong. Unless you have the context of knowing this is 100% embarrassment for a Vulcan. And then it makes more sense.
I don't quite understand the embarrassment personally, but okay, if this is not an episode about mating. This isn't like the intensity of the like a sexual drive of mating. For me, it was just about saying you're gonna be my wife. Like this is about claiming. If we knew that right after this fight scene, they were gonna go have like bloodlust sex,
Yeah.
I'm first of all a little more interested, but second, like that's not what happened. It was more like confirming that we're going to get married or confirming that one of us is going to die and then get married or whatever the situation kind of may be. But this episode wasn't really about the drive to mate. I think it was more about the drive to confirm wife. However, I think it was supposed to be confirm mate, and maybe I was supposed to like connect more with that. And because I know it doesn't happen, I wasn't as concerned about it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And what's interesting to me in watching this episode as the longtime Trekkie nerd, I'm more familiar with the Ponfar from like Tuvok when it happens to him in Voyager. Like I've seen that episode more recently and more regularly because I was very much a TNG Voyager DS9 kid. And it happens, I think it comes up in Enterprise as well, and it's referenced in other places. But this, going all the way back, now watching this episode, the origin of the Ponfar and this, Vulcans have to mate every 7 years or it's really, really bad for them. They focus less on that and more on the cultural stuff of taking a wife and owning a wife. And I think Star Trek deliberately moved away from that and focused on the biological element and what does that do to the individual, rather than the slightly awkward and icky, oh, Vulcan men own their wives. That's weird. I think that's something they didn't want to hold on to in Vulcan culture, understandably.
Yeah, I think I didn't think too much about like the ritual of it as much as I was just invested in the episode itself.
Yeah.
Also, because we have watched Strange New Worlds, I am familiar with a different kind of character work here, which was very, very interesting. And I'm glad that I got to see my favorite Spock and my favorite T'Pring and my favorite Chapel before this episode, because I have a little bit, but also then watching this one for the first time, number one, I can finally do the like everybody else. And number two, it gives me a bit more context about what people talk about in the chat when we have a guest about these characters from the original series. Now I'm like, oh, okay, I understand a bit more of the background.
This is why I was so tempted to show you this episode before season 2 of Strange New Worlds, because I didn't know that T'Pring was going to make an appearance in season 1. By the time we got to season 2, I was like, okay, they're clearly leaning into Chapel, they're leaning into T'Pring and Spock and stuff. But I decided not to, because they're clearly telling their own story that is 10 years removed from this. And I just, in my head, accepted that 8, 9, 10 years of time pass, Spock, Chapel, T'Pring all go on their own separate journeys. So much can happen over 10 years where you can grow apart, you can be completely different people. So that's why I consciously decided not to show you it at that point and just let Strange New Worlds be its own thing. But it is interesting to watch it now, I think.
Yeah, because then I know that, okay, so after whatever we're watching happens, at some point he goes back home and T'Pring has decided in the future of Strange New Worlds future, that she doesn't want to be a legend person. She doesn't want to be tied to that. She wants her own thing. And she has logicked her way through this sort of mystery of, okay, if Spock fights
I love it.
One, this happens. She'd gone through all of it.
I love the marriage math that she does. It's so great. And Spock just respects it. He's just like, impeccable logic. That's the most aroused we actually see Spock the entire episode. And she accepts it and he's just like, I am honored that you respect my logic.
Yeah. I love the honesty of the Vulcans. I always feel really drawn to that. Just this like open, direct, for her to just say it. Well, if you died, then that would still benefit me. I get all your shit.
Yeah, exactly. Like I would still have what is not Snod. What's his name? Ston. I get Ston on your stuff.
Yep. So yeah, it was a really interesting episode. So it wasn't for me, it wasn't the drive about the marriage. It was like, oh, this isn't or the I don't there was all of it was really interesting. The first half was a bit slow to decide to go to Vulcan or not. But I think that the mystery, if you had watched all of season one and you were watching the first half of this episode wondering what the fuck was going on with Spock, I think you would really be invested. For me, I'm less invested, but there's subtlety that they're doing in the first half with like the handshakes and him throwing the soup and yelling at people that would, I assume, be very unnerving if you were an early watcher and you're very concerned with what's happening. And the building of the secrecy of it makes sense to me. It's something really, really personal to Spock. And then, of course, you kick into the second half where you get to see this version of Spock that is not unhinged. He's still under control, but he's completely focused on a goal, doesn't even see the enemy in front of him is his own best friend, but is just working through this kind of ritual. And I was really loving that. I was loving seeing the history of how they introduced ritual so early in like the Vulcan creation. And even I got to see Spock's room. I'd never seen that before. So there's all these like little details that I'm paying attention to that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I love that. I was feeling the pacing a little bit in the first half and a little bit like, oh, come on, let's go. And a lot of that is just the amount of words used per minute and the amount of spacing between words is so different to what we're used to even from like the TNG era. And we always find that when we go back to the original series. But I was still having a blast. I was ready to come in here to defend it because I just got this sense that it was like killing you a little bit. You're like, come on, let's get to
No.
it. Because it's one of those episodes we've built up a bit with the
Yeah.
and like this Kirk versus Spock. So I didn't know how much you were expecting us to like get to that a lot quicker because it's that stuff, the fight doesn't start until like minute 38. It is
Yeah.
like 12 minutes from the end of the episode.
It's wild. Yeah. I mean, I think it stands up. I think it's a delight. The even the pacing, I kind of understand it a bit. For
Mhm.
example, we see Kirk laying in his bed and then he's thinking to himself, "Okay, what if we do divert for my
I
friend?"
love that.
Calling to the bridge. Turns out Spock's already told everybody to go where they're not supposed to go. And that kind of shows again how different things are for Spock. Like he is breaking the rules. And that really is what presses the show. So even though it's like, well, we could have got to that so much sooner. It doesn't have to be back and forth and back and forth. Um, it still makes sense why they decided to kind of layer it so you could just sort of
Yeah.
reveal how deviant Spock is being before you really understand why this is so important. And then it builds into this crazy moment. Which I mean, the storytelling of it's annoying, don't get me wrong. There's no reason for them not to mention that it's a fight to the death until it's dramatically revealed.
Until he's
But
accepted it. Like, by the way, you
by
didn't
the
read
way,
the
you
T's and
already said
C's.
yes.
You already
Yeah.
ticked the box. Sorry.
I mean, there's stuff like that that's annoying, but I still think it kind of makes sense and
Yeah.
it hits with a big punch at the end. So
No, I'm with you. As an overall story, I think it works incredibly well. It give like we had a lot of the Kirk and Spock friendship in season one, but this like just put such a strong foundation for them. Like it'd have been off air for a little while, maybe didn't know if you were getting a second series. And
mhm.
you come back in episode one, and it firmly establishes how much Kirk loves Spock and like the things that he's willing to risk. Like when you said the moment when he's in bed and he says, "You know what? I'll change course." And yeah, Spock has
Yeah.
already done it. But then he goes against Starfleet orders because he can't let his friend die, and
Yeah.
then he'll fight Spock so that Ston can't kill him. And the lengths that he'll go to his friend. That's one of the things that I love so much about TOS is they push that friendship so front and center in the show. I love it so much.
And there's a real satisfactory element to it, even with Spock at the end coming out and seeing
Oh
Kirk.
my gosh, that moment is an all timer. Like, how did you feel when Spock exploded?
It was it was incredible. It's what it needed. It needed it so strongly, and you
Yeah.
kind of don't know that you needed it until then, that somewhere deep inside, he's human, and he let it out right then. Like, he worked so hard to control this drive of his Vulcan spirit, and he works so hard to control that part. But in that moment, like just the joy that his best friend was still alive, wasn't dead, and he was there, and he like, kind of like hunches down, spins him around, smiles, and like
Yes,
and he says his name, like Jim, like it was
Jim.
great. And then the great humor beat of ending the episode with that sort of more controlled comment. Oh, of course, this back and forth between the three of them that is really epic and exciting. I mean, certainly if they were going to redo this episode in today's standards, we wouldn't really see some of the same pacing stuff.
Mm,
I know one thing for sure that would not be in a remake, and
go
that
on.
is so many jingle bells. But
Oh my god, my biggest sin is that I didn't immediately lurper the tingle people. Like Kirk and Spock should have just turned on them and said, "Right, enough, stab." So
Spock couldn't.
annoying.
Yeah, Spock was like in his little space, but okay, so I know ritual is ritual. And it was really interesting. I think that the jingle bells are needed to sort of cut through with sound some of the things that are
Oh,
happening.
I was
They're
going to
used
cut
in
through
really
them, all
interesting
right.
ways. But when they're like just jingle belling around the middle dais or they're
Stop
jingle
it.
belling here, it's so strange. And then as we're fading away from Vulcan, you're still kind of like hearing them echo in the background. So
Yes.
certainly, maybe we would get through some of the intensity of what's wrong with Spock a little bit faster, but I don't think that this is one that should ever be redone. I think this is like a sacred episode that does some really, really interesting storytelling, and every scene seems to have a very important kind of element. And
Yeah.
if you redid it and you sped it along or you kind of scooted through faster, I think we would be missing a lot of really interesting creation of more depth into the Vulcans for the first
Mm.
time, apparently, which is super interesting to me. And then just this way of storytelling that I don't think we should forget.
I do. I completely agree with that. There is a weight to taking your time with the first half of the episode. There's a weight to how, like, settling into how Spock is behaving and how different this is and how, like, shocking that is. Because I'm sure people would have been coming back to their TVs like, oh man, I'm kind of looking forward to Spock bringing some calm to the bridge and being logical. And it's almost cruel to welcome you back in with Spock just being unhinged and throwing soup out of his quarters and going crazy. So, but what it does is it hooks you in really, really quickly into what is going on. And the fact that it takes so long to explain what's happening just feeds into why it's so embarrassing. And that embarrassment is one of the things that Star Trek has held on to right up until today. Like that Vulcans being embarrassed by anything they can't control, especially when it comes to their own mind and their own emotions. Like that's so much Star Trek lore has continued from this episode.
I don't think that I picked up embarrassment as the driving force. And maybe that's something that I'm missing because I have less episodes in me,
Mm-hmm.
less influence. But to me, there isn't any embarrassing because embarrassment would be illogical. It's not embarrassing to have that be part of who you are. It's probably for me more like a protection, like you don't talk about it because it's it is what it is. So I didn't really feel like it was embarrassing to talk about it. I thought it was more like you can't understand. I'm going to say the words like birds and
Mm.
bees and salmon and hope that you understand, but there's no way for you to understand. So it's illogical for me to sit here and try to explain it to you because it's a waste of time. That's sort of more the vibe
Mm.
that I got than embarrassment.
So I struggle with the logic of it as well because it's a natural process. Like this is a natural process for Vulcans. It doesn't make sense to be embarrassed by it or to hide it away. So the way I've had to reconcile it in my head, because Spock does say to Kirk, "We don't speak of it. Do you know what it's like for a race that controls their emotions to be overwhelmed by this and to
Yeah.
have this blood fever take us and then do this really carnal act that we can't control? Like, do you know how that feels?" So I think he is trying to communicate the embarrassment behind that
Mhm.
lack of control. But I do struggle with that being illogical because it's biology.
Mm.
Like you shouldn't be embarrassed by sex. You just talk about it and say, "Yep, this is a ritual I have to go through. Sorry." So it's kind of a bit of a
Yeah.
cognitive dissonance for me
Yeah.
why they hide this so
Well,
much.
I mean, it could be considered a weakness. It's maybe the closest that they come to making
Yeah, I think that's it.
irrational decisions. And so maybe there is an embarrassment to it because a flaw that they have somehow built this, not built, but they've evolved to have like this culmination of all of this illogical raw thinking or feeling or whatever into this one particular space when it comes to choosing a mate. And there's a lot of symbolism in that too. And I think also for the time that it was written, there is this back and forth between owning a woman and owning a mate and being able to claim it, being able to give in to that raw, like just really like aggressive sexual desire. And so maybe there is an element of quote unquote an embarrassment of that because they're trying to kind of tiptoe into these areas of storytelling.
Oh yeah, especially back in the 60s. Yeah.
Yeah.
My theory is that it's actually it's because of the repressed emotions that this thing comes around. Like, and I don't think it's ever been confirmed on screen or in canon why it is. It probably has in a book. But I, in my head, I like to think that because they've suppressed all of these emotions, and it's such a big part of their day-to-day life is suppressing everything, that once every 7 years is a direct consequence of all of
Mm.
the emotional suppression. And this explosion is something they have to deal with because they suppress everything for so long.
Yeah, and then it's kind of all focused into this one moment where you go into this deep meditation to ride raw emotion and make crazy choices. So of course it's the best time to kill people and have sex. Great.
And that kind of makes sense in my head that if you're going to unleash the emotion, evolutionarily, the ones that did it during mating would be the ones that survived because they're the ones that had children, and then there would be a selective pressure for that to
Mhm.
continue onwards, because the ones that kept suppressing, maybe they didn't, maybe some of them didn't have kids, so that gene wouldn't be passed on.
I feel like we could stop the show and think about just how this ritual would impact an entire species,
Oh, I love
and
that.
then come back and talk about it a week later and have a whole bunch of new questions to ask. And that's kind of the fun thing about this medium, Star Trek, is that they'll introduce these little things, these little mentions of aliens or planets or ritual or whatever. And then like from it births entire ideas of how a species becomes and evolves and has this history. So it's just really neat to see this show give us some of what they think is a really interesting with context and more depth to the Spock character that cannot be underplayed. That this is giving Spock not just this flat line baseline. They've taken a character that everyone is like, I know what to expect from Spock. He's the logical robot guy or whatever. And then all of a sudden they've made him into this very emotional, almost relatable in a human sense character, and then also just flooded us with like Vulcan history. Like imagine watching this for the first time.
Oh my
And
gosh, I
even
would die.
even in the slow parts,
Yeah.
you go to the commercial break and you spend the next however many minutes, 5, 10 minutes before it comes back, wondering what's wrong with Spock. And at each time, it's like, maybe it's a biohazard. Maybe he was bit by a space bug. Maybe he had bad food. Maybe him and Chapel are in love. Oh my God, he's going to kill Kirk.
Is that a knife? Is he holding a knife behind his back? Is he going to kill Kirk in his own bedroom?
That was, I mean, like you're really, so that is super fun. And we don't get to experience it watching it without commercials. We're just
Yeah.
watching what they're doing, but they've just done something really fun with this character and it just gets more and more and more intense. And you might think that Kirk is dead. So what a fun episode. Like this
Yeah.
is great storytelling for so many reasons.
Oh, that makes me so happy. Yeah, I think it's a classic for a really good reason, and I think it's so smart to zero in on Spock, because sometimes you do get backstory for a character and you're like, are we doing this? Do we need that much screen time? It's so smart to dive in on Spock, put him in a situation where he's acting the opposite to how we would usually expect Spock, and give us so much Vulcan depth and the costumes and the makeup. Yeah, it's a really smart episode.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good transition into, like, we kind of touched on it, but how much Vulcan we get, including
Vulcan. Sorry.
wow, the first time we get to see the Vulcan planet. How
It's
was that?
so red.
So red.
I think it's a really good contrasting color though, especially against like his shirt, his kind of blue
Yes.
shirt, Yeah, it's really interesting. So the planet is the first time you see the planet, it's sparkly sand, rock, and all of the sort of taupe family.
Yes. Yes.
And then a wide shot of this elevated
Ah.
bridge. What?
The wide shot wasn't there originally. That's a new thing they've added. Yeah.
Oh.
So that pan back to Stonehenge, and then the little figures that are walking along, that was added. I'm gonna balls it up, but I think in the noughts sometime.
Okay. Well, I thought it was cool looking.
Yeah, they've blended it in really, really well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like this transition shot. So you're going over this bridge. So we're on this elevated sort of pillar. And then in the distance, you can kind of see a civilization of some kind.
Mm.
This sort of circular shaped civilization. And it seems like Vulcan's kind of a wasteland.
Yeah, we kind of get confirmed like what the habitat on Vulcan is like. And McCoy says, now I know where the saying hot as Vulcan comes from. And the air is thinner and it's a lot warmer. And I wonder if that's like a Superman Krypton thing, because in season 1, it's well established that Vulcans have superior strength, endurance, they live longer. So it's a little bit like, yeah, compared to an Earth atmosphere, Vulcans are really strong because they've had to grow on a planet where the oxygen was thinner. And when they're in an oxygen-rich environment, they're like a lot stronger. So that was
Which is why you can smash a computer.
Yeah, well, that was the is it cake moment that I think he just had in his
Oh
corner.
my God.
Is it cake? Smash. It is cake.
Same thought.
Yes.
Amazing. And so then we're kind of in this sacred sort of circular space where we see like jade.
Yeah.
Sort of like a jade gong and this
Bong.
jade hammer, and then this almost like a jade dais, and then you hear like the progression approaching, and then you see the weaponry that we're using. We've got 2 rounds of weaponry.
Mm-hmm.
And we have very interesting attire going on. A lot of really wig work in this one as well.
The hair, makeup, and costuming in this episode is incredible. They went like somebody knew that they were creating the Vulcans and were like, yeah, this is gonna be good shit. Like,
yeah, we're gonna use tinfoil today.
It's not tinfoil. It looks okay. The soldiers are wearing tinfoil hats. They are very paranoid people. They have psychic abilities, so they wear the tinfoil hats so that no one else can read their minds. That's just for the soldiers. Everyone else looks beautiful.
This is wrong of me, but I expected more. But here's why. I'm watching the Strange New Worlds version of Vulcan.
No,
and their attire is super intricate, very geometric patterned. The jewelry that's going on, it's very ornate. And so to see the simple start of we're wearing a silver tunic, and to denote that the battle is starting, boy, did Janice knit this purple scarf so fast for us, and it kind of goes like a little sash around the waist.
Spock. Don't worry about it. Just gonna tie that off. It's okay. You're playing tag.
But despite it all, I was still really impressed. You know, like obviously they're carrying in this important lady to Tau.
To Pow. Yeah, the Vulcan queen, essentially, who we only know is important because McCoy and Kirk are very impressed.
Yeah, because she's the only person to say no to the Federation.
To being on the Federation Council, right? How dare she? Honestly.
They were still kind of impressed with her, like in awe, essentially.
Well, and we find out that Spock is basically landed gentry. He is he's a wealthy landowner. Like, he's one of the elite on Vulcan because this is all his land, and T'Pau is coming to his wedding. So we know that we get a lot more information about his stature among the Vulcan people as well.
I missed that reference. I think the only stature that I figured was when T'Pring says that he is somewhat of a legend.
Yeah, that comes later. But when they get there, Spock says that this land has been in my family for thousands of years. And McCoy, I think, says, wow, I can't believe T'Pau is here at his wedding. Like, Spock never told us that his family was that important.
Yeah, I remember this land has been in my family, but I don't know that I registered that it was specifically his. I felt like it was like the Vulcans had owned it for.
No, I think this is specifically his land for his family's wedding ceremonies. That may well be that a lot of people have it.
Okay, that's what.
The what now? Did you do it?
I don't know.
Do it. Say it again.
Hakuna Matata?
Yeah, the Hakuna Matata. That's what they have. The Kuna Khalifi.
Yeah, that's what I
That's the
said.
one.
Pretty
I
sure.
think that is what you said. Are you ready to have your mind blown even more by how Vulcan this episode is?
Yes, I am.
This is the first appearance of the Vulcan salute and Live Long and Prosper.
What? That hasn't been in there at all before now?
All of season 1.
He never did the live long. He never did the handy thing?
Never. Not once.
No way.
It's a Mandela effect.
I mean,
I had to go, I didn't trust Google because I know Amok Time's a big episode, but I wanted to know just how much of Vulcan comes from this episode. And I went through like a few different articles, and yeah, this is the first time you get the hand gesture and Live Long and Prosper.
And to think how did it immediately just kick off like wildfire? Because
I guess so. I mean, it occurs a lot more throughout season 2. But yeah, I think as much as people latched on to Spock in season 1, this gave them a way to show that love. And I guarantee that through the conventions, it just expanded and grew and grew and grew. Like, it's a catchphrase. It's something to easily like just to latch onto. So yeah,
every
I don't think it took
person watching looked down at their hand and tried to make their muscles do that in that moment. It was like a universal, everyone at the same time did it at the same time.
It's the way Spock just walks up to T'Pau, just hand up and just like
I
so
thought they were gonna
forward
high
with.
five.
Yeah, I was hoping for a high five. But
it was so cool because he kneels down and like acquiesces his brain to her.
Yes. Yeah, a reverse mind meld. Her hand is upside down doing the mind meld gesture. That wasn't lost on me either.
She can do it from any angle.
She can. So yeah, live long and prosper, and the Vulcan
incredible.
salute. That's where it came from. It's so fun.
Do we find out why their weaponry falls apart so quickly?
Just
after this
sheer
episode?
muscle. Just
power.
Kirk is just a powerful being. This is probably a good time to get into if this has created like any conflicts between Strange New Worlds and like what you know about T'Pring and Chapel and Spock, and whether that's like kind of conflicted any more in your brain. Because we've had an email from Flyboy who gave a great synopsis of this. I wanted to hear your thoughts, and then I'll dip into what Flyboy has to say.
I think it was great because obviously we get to see that Chapel is sort of struggling with her feelings, and Spock is struggling with the boundaries, like you're not mine kind of a vibe. And he kind of comes out of that rest at one point and said he had a dream that she was trying to tell him something and he didn't understand her.
Oh my God, he didn't listen. He couldn't hear her.
Yeah. So just the symbolism that they're building, in that moment, the simplicity of him asking her for something and she knowing, okay, I can do this. I can do this one soupy thing, But then I was thinking about it earlier, like Chapel in Strange New Worlds, still acts similarly, a bit reserved, guarded but we get to see more interaction between them than I think TOS would have ever really allowed because women characters at that time were doing very specific role bits. And now we get to see them just be dynamic humans instead of sort of archetypes. So of course we're going to see, more from Chapel, but if you go into the future and you see she's still being resistant, well, now she knows about T'Pring, she knows about all these things, So I don't think it took anything away from me. On the T'Pring end, it's really interesting because we've now seen them have these like moments where they get to see each other. And while the crew is shocked that T'Pring is on screen, when in reality they've met her before, according to Strange New Worlds, I don't really care about that too much. Because the big reveal in this moment was it had to have been fun for TV. Like, oh, he's got a woman.
Spock's got a wife.
Yeah. But I think what I'm clinging to more is this reality that T'Pring has visited him, has seen how Starfleet is changing him. It lends more to why he's a legend. And she has come to the realization after all of that experience that she doesn't want that. She'd rather him die so she can have the other man. And that to me makes sense because she's actually seen it in person and been involved, and she's saying no to that instead of no to just whatever Spock could be. She's actually seen it.
Yeah, I completely agree. For me, rewatching this episode has had the opposite effect in my canon brain. I actually think there is nothing in here that really conflicts, and I think I appreciate this episode more because of what Strange New Worlds is doing. So the conversation that Chapel and Spock have, where he's like, there's no point denying like our biology, and she's just like really reserved and held back. Now I'm reading a relationship that they had 9 years earlier, 7 years earlier, whatever, that they put to bed a long time ago, and she's reliving the brief relationship that was. And now I'm picturing what this TOS character is thinking about the things her Strange New Worlds character went through, even though we're like 50 years removed. So for me, that scene is even better now with the Strange New World knowledge on top of it.
Chapel would know he's probably really close to going and sealing the deal with T'Pring.
Yeah, this is it. Like this is actually goodbye to Spock. So I don't think that conflicts too much for me. And I wanted to mention Flyboy's email because Flyboy has been a big proponent throughout Strange New Worlds of this doesn't break the canon. This is fine. It's completely in order. And I have pushed back a bit because I was like, man, this really doesn't make sense. But having rewatched this episode and Flyboy's picked out some cool points that I want to mention, I have changed my stance. He mentioned the Chapel and Spock conversation that I just mentioned. The other confusing thing is people not knowing T'Pring. And one of them is Uhura on the bridge, who's like, she's lovely, Spock. And it's very surprising that T'Pring is a person. And technically, Uhura never met T'Pring in Strange New Worlds, so it's okay. It's fine.
Oh,
they actually didn't share any screen time together, so it's plausible that Uhura still doesn't know who T'Pring is, or at the very least has never seen her. Flyboy also mentions that Chapel doesn't necessarily say in this episode, she doesn't ask who T'Pring is. She comes to the bridge and says, what's going on? So it could very well be that she does know that that's T'Pring, but is just surprised about the wife element, because at this point she doesn't understand the nuance of what wife means in Vulcan. Like Spock says, it's somewhere beyond betrothed, but less than wife. Like you don't really have a word for it. So I think we need to give, and I'm going to give Strange New Worlds a bit more credit for how they've handled exploring the Spock T'Pring Chapel thing while knowing that TOS exists. And I think they've actually done a much better job than I've given them credit for.
Yeah, there's just enough in this episode to keep it incredibly nebulous that there's room to play. And it makes me appreciate Strange New Worlds even more because they're still trying to honor. Like imagine being like, hey guys, one of the basic rules is that T'Pring and Uhura can't be in the same shot together.
Yes. And I think they've done it. I think they've done it so far.
And I wasn't looking for that, but that's awesome. Nope. I will next season.
Oh yeah, no, season 3 could completely undo this. But yeah. I mean, I love the respect for not messing around too much with this kind of stuff, but still wanting to explore something that's fun, like giving Spock and Chapel more of a history. One of the other, now this is just a nerdy moment, just completely changing gears a little bit. The famous score, and that is very subtly introduced. The second Spock says Ponfar in his quarters. I'd never noticed that until now.
Oh, really? I wrote it down on my notes. Like, oh, we got a little bit of the music undertone here because, of course, I'm listening for it.
Yeah.
And it has a lot of guitar in this one too, almost like I'm going to use the word Western, but I think if I say Western, you might think more like country music, but instead it's sort of that lone, serious
dual.
Dual music. So that was really interesting too.
Yeah. No, I love that so much. I love how Star Trek gives things themes and sticks with them. The Enterprise always has its theme that comes along with it. The music is always something that makes me so happy.
I did want to talk about Spock's room just really briefly.
Yeah, let's go.
Is it not giving like rock concert at one moment?
Nope. Why?
I don't know. So, okay.
What?
Okay, I first glance it and it's through sort of like it's behind like this wall and it's all red and it's like interestingly lit and there's a statue in the middle with a glowy ball changing colors, and there's something on the wall. But so I wrote down,
Okay.
are those
Yeah.
microphones? Is this like rock band time? Because it kind of looked like a stage. But then you get to go into the room when Chapel visits and their weapons. And I was like, oh my God, is this when he kills Chapel? Because he's fucking crazy right now. And she's going to wake him up and he's going to grab one of these things and stab her. And wouldn't that be an interesting thing to see on TV? No, that didn't happen. There was some tears there, but it was so like rock and roll badass that I thought maybe. So anyway, it was giving me all these interesting things. And then we got to see him play his music, which was really cool.
Oh, his Vulcan loot.
Yep. So I really liked his room. I thought it told a lot about the character. There was the chest behind him. We got to see so many different kind of elements, and that again gave this really strong ritual element that I know was pushed in this episode quite a lot. But I thought that was very interesting because in the Strange New Worlds quarters, we do still see a lot of sort of his personality, but it wasn't quite so. And here's my sacred prayer chamber, which is actually his bed.
Yes.
It's where he was sleeping. So
Yep.
that was really interesting. Kirk's room is really boring by comparison. It just has a red ball pretty much.
Decorating a character's room is a gift because it's such an opportunity to tell the audience what is important to them. Because sometimes we decorate things on a whim, but when you're on a starship and you're away from home and this room defines you, the things that you choose to put up is so important. And I think about Worf's quarters. Like, Worf has the most fascinating quarters for me in all of Star Trek. He has like the crazy marble hand chair. He has like warrior statues. And it's fun that they do the same for Spock. Like, we don't get a lot of information about what the things in his room are, but they must be important and symbolic to him.
I think the last thing I would want to say too, just is I thought that the writing in this episode was really, really
Yes.
beautiful. Specifically, the point when Spock is begging for Kirk's life and he's sort of struggling, and he says, "My eyes are flame, my heart is flame. He has the power to pow. In the name of my fathers, forbid it, forbid." But it's like how it's performed. And it's like that throughout the whole thing. There's just these really interesting things. Or when he sees to Pre on screen for the first time and they have that sort of logical exchange. It was so familiar to me because I've seen it in Strange New Worlds. And
They have the same greeting in Strange New Worlds.
yeah.
And it's such a beautifully written ceremonial greeting. And it's kind of like in lieu of saying, "Oh, I love you. It's so good to see you. I miss you." They want to acknowledge the moment and the feeling that comes with it. But because they suppress feelings, they put this traditional thing that you can say, just like all of the emotion that you need to communicate will be communicated in these predetermined words that I'm going to speak to you. It's such a logical way to greet family. But no, I completely agree. This has got some of the best writing of any TOS episode. And that moment with T'Pau where, I mean, she says, "You will not speak to your friend. He will not speak to you because he's in the middle of the blood fever." She's shocked that he's managed to break free. He loves Kirk so much that he broke through the blood fever to plead for his life. But I completely get why he still came down on the side of, fuck, I'm going to have to fight him. Because she's like, "Are you Vulcan or are you not? Because you got to make a call here, buddy."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, I've chosen to be Vulcan." And he has.
Yeah.
He could have been human, but he has chosen to be Vulcan. And that comes with consequences. That's such a good, underrated, well-written moment.
And even the language that T'Pau speaks about, like everything, even they're introducing all these new words for these new challenges and ritual and everything. And then like, it has begun, let no one interfere. Just these kind of ways of really intensifying the minutes. And then you've got the fun back and forth between everybody when they're back on the bridge and in the show, or on the starship on the Enterprise, and they're kind of exchanging like, "Oh, there's the show I remember from last season."
Yes. I love the Chekhov. This is the first appearance of Chekhov as well.
Oh,
Yeah, he wasn't in season 1 at all.
wow. Okay.
Right, a lot of firsts in this episode. I love the little breather that we get, the back and forth between him and Sulu, where he's like, "What do you think of it? We're going to Altair 6, then we're going to Vulcan, then we're going to Altair 6. And Sulu's just like, "Yeah, I'd plot a course for Vulcan just in case."
Just in case. Yeah.
And the payoff later when Kirk is like, "Set a course for Vulcan," is like, "Yeah, already plotted, laying it in." He's like, "Oh, okay. I appear to have become predictable."
I mean, okay, I know we want to move on to the sins, but also I just thought of this other thing. The fight, we need to talk about the fight just a bit. I know
Oh, of course we do. Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
joked
absolutely.
I joked about the things falling apart and everything like that, but watching the stuntmen and the scene
Yes.
work and the overhead shots and the different changes and them jumping around and rolling around together, I just we just don't get stuff like that anymore.
We don't. That's the best review that you can have of it. Is we don't get this anymore, because if you don't like it, perfect review. If you love it, perfect review. And I love it. Like, I love this. Just sit the camera there, and okay,
And
maybe
watch
you can
the guys
see that that's
wrestle.
yeah. Maybe you can see that that's not Shatner. Clearly, that's not Shatner. This man looks completely different. But they're rolling around. They're swinging at each other. The skipping rope doesn't make any sense, but boy, it looks like it hurts. So they're just whipping each other with it. And I just love this fight. And the important of the moment is Kirk versus Spock.
Yeah.
Not that they're expert fighters. And I think the way they balance the fight, the setup is great, because Kirk says to McCoy, like, looking at Ston, what do you think his chances are? Because we're like, why should we be worried about this? Of course Spock is going to win. No, because he's in the middle of the Pon farr and his organs are shutting down and he's screwed. This is not a fair fight. But what that also does is that it makes it a fair fight for the human Kirk, who shouldn't have a chance against Spock. Spock has super strength. He should destroy Kirk. So it's really subtle, but the fight itself is set up very, very deliberately to make sense.
I I think there's a real bravery to this type of fighting. And what I mean by that is the camera work. Like you said, set the camera down, let the men wrestle, and change the angles a few times. They still do a really great job of like kind of cutting back and forth. You'll see like one guy roll and then it cuts to like, you know,
Close up on
Leonard.
Shatner.
Yeah, these
Yeah.
so it's not like it's just the camera being still. We actually do have an overhead shot at one point in time. But for me, it felt a bit more real. Like if you
Yeah.
said, Deneé, you've got to fight your best friend, I'd be like, it would not look pretty.
Like pulling hair and just like pushing each other down.
It would be
Spock
like
should have tweaked his nipples as soon as like his chest was exposed.
they just sort of like grunt together with these thick sticks and stare at each other. And I think I would either be like, oh my God, I'm about to, and then you have to just let it go. And then we're throwing punches. But when Spock first slashes and it slashes his shirt open and gives him
Yeah.
that cut, there's this moment where, like, oh, Spock, he's not holding back.
He's not pulling punches.
And we know that Kirk knows how to punch, or at least the Kirk punch. And
Hmm.
so then we get
There are
to
some
kind of
judo
see
chops as
yeah.
well. Some just like full flat-handed chops to the neck from Kirk.
So my notes in the section are the stunt doubles are in. No, I
Yes.
think it starts with Spock and Kirk face off, pressing the handles together, leaping. He slices Jim's chest and shirt. Spock ain't kidding around. Music is musicking. Stunt doubles are in. The gong is broken. They hit with the hard part and press to kill, and Kirk is on top and the blade is knocked off. An overhead shot as Spock swings and jabs the blade and hit to a face, and Kirk is down and it's almost kill time and he kicks back up. And then Rorka, she says to stop it. And that was interesting. I didn't quite understand why that was stopped.
So basically it was a stalemate, and you could say that it's premature, but there's two portions to the fight. So she says if both people survive the Lerpa fight, then we move on to the second weapon. So that was her
That part,
calling
okay.
it that this fight is over.
Gotcha.
Even though you could argue Spock had the upper hand, she was deeming that part of the fight over, move on to the next weapon.
I see. Okay, so I missed a little bit of the explanation because so imagine watching it and being like,
Yeah, what's going on? Why are we stopping the fight?
and then we have the clever moment when the, doctor steps in, administers
Oh, it's so
this
great.
triox compound to quote unquote help him breathe, which actually gives him the neurotoxin. And
It's
he
so
says,
great.
you're gonna have to kill him. Like, he doesn't even tell Kirk what he did.
No, he doesn't give anything
tell
away.
anybody.
Like, it's kind of wild. Like, he doesn't. I think he can't risk it. Like, this has got to be a good show. And I think he knows that Kirk's not going to do that. Like, Kirk would rather die than kill Spock.
But he doesn't know that Spock's not gonna stab him or something. It's a good thing that the next weapons were just sort of like, I'm gonna choke you out.
Yeah, now you get
stabbing.
phasers.
Quite lucky. And I
Yeah.
love that Kirk's response to McCoy saying you're gonna have to kill him is, that's not what I came to Vulcan for, is it? Like, I didn't come.
Oh, it's such a funny offhand line. It's like, well, that's not why we came to Vulcan, was it
And then
now?
he goes, the doctor says, be careful. And Kirk goes, some medical advice.
Thanks, Doc.
So they're still just having a good, and then it's like the envoo, jingle, 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 jingle. And then I wrote down, which I wrote, the envoo, jingle, jingle, jingle. Things come out. I guess it's time to jump rope now with balls on the end.
No, you can't unsee it, can
Tackle, roll, hit, open palm, to the coals, choking with strip. Kirk is almost out, and Spock is choking him. He's totally winning. Spock wins. And of course, I know.
But I don't know if you know in the 60s.
But in the 60s, do you know? How?
Yeah, exactly. Like, because there's not necessarily this internet machine. Well, there definitely isn't an internet machine, but there's not necessarily a way of knowing for certain that Shatner returns for one episode and is then recast. Like, I think it would have been incredibly shocking, but it's played out well enough that I can imagine you believing that Kirk is dead.
You hear them beaming off screen. You don't
Off
see it.
camera. Oh, yeah.
Off camera.
I love that. Yeah.
And T'Pau says, I grieve with thee. And then, you're just like, so it was a really cool fight is my point. Like it had a lot of activity. There were a lot of elements to it. It was just really clever storytelling. So I know you've got some quotes that you want to share, but I had to mention that the fights.
Oh no, we can't.
Really fun.
Yeah, we couldn't move on without talking about the fight. The Star Trek TOS fights in particular can be a bit hammy. It's like you can have a lot of Kirk doing the double fist punching. And this just felt like it had a little bit less of that. It did feel more intense. It felt more of a passionate fight between two friends. Like it has that weight. Like this isn't a silly throwaway fight. This is Kirk versus Spock. This is the two closest best friends doing what they shouldn't be doing.
And if Kirk wins his attempt, he's just going to try to knock him out. But he doesn't. He doesn't win. So the audience knows that Kirk's plan was just to try to knock him out. But it didn't work that way.
No, I love it so much. And that does lead into just T'Pring's plan. Genuinely is a pretty decent plan. Like, and just the way they dispassionately Poirot it at the end and just explain what the villain's plan was. I love that so much. And referring back to Flyboy's email again, he grew up thinking that, man, she's such a bitch. Like, I hate her. But as he's grown and watched this again and again and again, the perspective changes. And this is actually a woman being owned that is grabbing the power she can and manipulating her situation to, despite culture, be with the person she wants and have some autonomy as well. It's actually way more powerful than it probably was given credit for.
I'm glad you said that.
So good.
Because I did have that thought, and I forgot to mention kind of that it's so wild that Star Trek said her choice is also to just have him killed by whoever she wants.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you die, I get Ston. If you don't die, like, you're not going to live with the shame of being rejected, so I get Ston. Like, this is what I'm going to do. I don't care about Kirk. I don't care about you. Ston's the one that's on Vulcan with me.
Yeah. And she knew him well enough to say, you would release me. You're going to forgive me and you're going to give me Ston. And he's like, yep. Also, you're not going to stay here. Like, we're going to get married and then you're going to go back onto the Enterprise. So, and that's my favorite bit, is that she's like, okay, I pick Kirk, you win. You don't release me, which I don't think is likely. But even then, you leave. You go back to Starfleet. I'm married to you, but I'm here on the planet. With
Ston is still here. I'm not necessarily doing anything with Ston, but we are here together. So she's like, there's no way that this turns out badly for me. Like, it's such a great plan.
In moments because she did not know Kirk was going to be there.
Yes, that layer of the plan she adapted on the fly. Yeah.
Her plan going in was Ston to kill Spock.
Yeah, like, Ston, kill Spock. You better go for it.
Ston knew it. He has just been working out for a while, like getting ready.
The most ripped Vulcan you'll ever see.
Yeah.
It's so clever. It's my favorite part. I have so much respect for T'Pring.
Yeah, it was very interesting. Yeah.
The other thing I want to make is the actor that plays T'Pau, Celia Lovsky. I think she does, like, somehow you can see she's carrying the weight of 50 years of Vulcan canon on her shoulders, even though this is day one of Vulcan canon, essentially. Like, what she brings to being the Vulcan leader. And I wish I knew more about this. I'm sure there's plenty online about it that I'll have to look into. But the way she talks and the way she delivers those lines, and this is like thee's choice, thee has decided. I love her, like, delivery, because there is historically, in England, kings and the queens and the upper classes would talk differently and have a different like dialect to the other classes. And I feel like that's the same thing here. Like she's carrying on this way of speaking that is to denote her stature.
I liked it too. I also like that she was a woman.
Yeah.
It's another way to subtly subvert that these are
Yes.
different people. Like the person in power giving a woman away isn't a man. It's a woman.
It's so interesting. It makes you think so hard about the ownership thing feels so icky, but then to just overlay that to power is so respected and in power. And there's a way that Vulcans are doing it where they're all on board and there's still ways for women to have power. It's so interesting to dive into in 25 minutes because it's not even what the episode is about. It's not what the episode is about at all, really.
It kind
of. Not really. It's wild.
It's like what happens when you write an episode and then all of a sudden it becomes way bigger than you know that it's going to be, like making the Vulcan salute, live long and prosper, that kind of a thing.
These are the most common questions that I have. If I could ever go back in time and speak to the people involved is, did you know? What percentage did you know? Were you 25% aware that you were creating something incredible? Were you 25% hopeful that you were creating something that was going to live forever? Or is it just an artifact of Star Trek has lasted forever, therefore the things that were created are now held up as these super important cultural moments? I don't know that there's a way you can really understand 1 year into the show what you're creating and the impact it will have.
Yeah.
So special. There were a couple of other lines that I wanted to throw out that are just beautifully written and kind of come out of nowhere. And this is Spock is done applauding the most intelligent person on the planet, T'Pring, and turns to Ston and says, I think you'll find that one day having is not so pleasing a thing after all as wanting. And I was like, where did that bit of wisdom come from, Spock? And just like, be careful, because T'Pring played me. She may play you as well. Like, you might think this is love, but I kind of think that because he doesn't know anything about Ston, he's like, will T'Pring be satisfied with Ston as well? And just to throw that line in there is such an interesting choice.
Not to send it to her.
Yes, exactly. Because she's in control.
Well.
Like, she doesn't need to have that said to her. She knows it. But this is advice like, Ston, watch your back.
The line that I found in that moment was when he goes to talk to Pow, and she says, live long and prosper, Spock. And he says, I shall do neither. I have killed my captain and my friend.
Oh my goodness, I shall do neither.
Ugh. So sad. And then he's like, energize, which is like the worst word to have to say after you feel so defeated.
I'm not feeling energized at all. Quit it. There's one final line, which is just, it's iconic and it's brilliant. And it's Kirk arrives and we have the big spin around moment and he says, Jim, you're alive. But then he resets himself and says, fooling nobody, I am pleased to see you, Captain. You seem uninjured. Like, understatement of you were dead. And this is his way of saying you're alive. You seem uninjured for a dead man. This is interesting.
He said uninhibited. That's funny.
Oh, no. He says you appear uninjured. Just like
uninjured, yeah.
The best way to say you're not as dead as I thought you were a few minutes ago. I
am something of a loss to understand.
Yes. You appear to be healthy for a dead man. Please, what happened here? I love it. On reflection, I did not fully appreciate how iconic and how important this episode is. This might go up there as if I'm forced to introduce somebody to Star Trek with TOS. This might be the first episode I show them, because this tells you so much about the dynamic of the characters on the ship as well. You get a lot of Vulcan backstory. I don't think it's a bad place to start.
No, I guess you get to see the sick bay, you get to see the bridge, you get to see Captain Kirk's room, you get to see Spock's room. So you kind of like get to go around the Enterprise a bit, which is sort of fun when you're on a ship and you get to see different parts of the ship, and you get to visit a planet, and you get to be introduced to Starfleet a bit, and that the captain has to answer to somebody. You get to see different characters interplaying together. a mystery unfold, the birth of an entire race of
Goodness, yeah.
aliens. So yeah, I think this would be a really good first episode to show.
Yeah. I just wanted to mention this is an email that I'm going to read in full on a different episode, but this is an email from T, who said he absolutely loves the podcast, but his favorite moments are when we do our singing. So I just want to dedicate this episode to T for the amount of this episode is an absolute gift to anybody that enjoys us doing that impression. This is the episode for you. For anybody who hates it, sorry.
Sorry about that.
Okay, let's head over to engineering and do some sins.
Warning. Warp core collapse in 10 seconds.
This is the part of the show where we re-engage our sin brains, remind ourselves that no TV shows without sin, even our beloved Star Trek. Go for it, Ambassador.
What would the implications be on Spock not having killed the person? Does that mean that the ritual was not complete?
Because she doesn't say.
And T'Pau is honored that they killed someone and that it's done.
Yeah.
But she would find out that Kirk is still alive and that they were tricked. So
that's a great point.
What are the long-term implications of that for, like, does that ever play out? Is there bad blood between Spock and his people because he didn't do it, but it's still true. Like he doesn't go back and say, hey guys, that wasn't a real ritual. Turns out to praying, sorry, we're still together. Like that doesn't reset anything, does it? That's
a really good point. This specifically is never addressed again. We never see T'Pring again. So, but the T'Pring side doesn't matter too much because Spock says, I release you, you're free to go off with Ston, that's fine. But yeah, T'Pau should feel pretty betrayed. Spock goes back to Vulcan in the motion picture, the first Star Trek movie, and it starts with him on Vulcan finishing this ritual, which is the purge of all emotion. And somebody who looks like T'Pau, and I just did a bit of Googling, but it's not the same actor, but somebody that I could believe is T'Pau, the character, but I don't think she's mentioned by name, is like, you have failed this ritual because your mind is elsewhere, get out of here. So he's not rejected by his people for this deceit. But yeah, you're right. There is a conversation that should be had afterwards of, by the way, Kirk survived. We kind of fudged the ritual. But I wonder if they get away with it on a technicality because he kind of died. Like it was a simulated death. Like as far as Spock is aware, he killed Kirk. So maybe like ritualistically, everything was satisfied as much as needed to be. But I think you're right. I think she would be pissed.
Yeah, the show even has Spock say after the ritual is complete and the madness was gone, I had no desire for T'Pring.
Oh, they hand wave that
so they just
so hard.
They're like, and I was just worried for my captain, and now I'm the captain of the ship, and I've got to go. Like, it was gone, it was done. But traditionally in ritual, there was no sacrifice. So,
no, I'm with you.
I guess that's a sin in my book.
I think so, and my follow-on sin to that is the hand waviness of, I guess everything's fine because like, hey, I killed you and suddenly the blood fever was gone, my erection was gone, didn't need to like ponfar anything anymore. Like I was good. I guess that all turned out great. It's very quickly hand waved away.
Yep. The next one for me, you kind of actually referenced as a really powerful thing, which was that like Spock can't hear anybody because he's deep in the blood boiling.
Yes, the blood fever.
But then he does hear her say Spock. So he is able to hear. And I was like, well, that's convenient.
Yeah, I can't bring myself to say it because it's so powerful. There is linked back to Spock killing a man. I don't think this should have quite the happy ending it does because yes, Spock is relieved. However, for all intents and purposes, he strangled Kirk to death. And that still happened. Like, yes, Kirk lived.
Yeah.
But that still happened. He still killed him.
Yeah.
And let's go mind the store, Spock. Like, they both need therapy. They both need to talk to somebody about that. Because, yeah, it's like, I don't know, you have a car crash. Unfortunately, everybody survived, but you still had a car crash. Like, there's still stuff to reckon with there. Like, but it's the classic one episode memory of, we'll just move along from that.
I know that they couldn't have ever imagined the importance of the lore that they were introducing.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that left me at the end of this episode was, well, you said that you guys touched each other's thoughts when you were like 7 years old and so that you could stay connected. But like, when do you untouch? Like, you forgot that part. You're
Yeah.
supposed to slap each other or something and like end it because they didn't do anything visually except for the words between them to represent that the ritual had come to an end and that they were rejected. It was just a really interesting part that I was like, okay, but you guys are still connected, right? Like, don't you want to like not share thoughts now? It's kind of like when you get a divorce and it's time to separate your bank account. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, there's a lot of work that needs to go then. You probably need a third party to litigate between you and make sure everything is copacetic.
you know what? It's fine.
Yeah.
Kirk died. We need to move on. But that was a lingering thing.
It's part of the consequence of having to give it weight. So
Yes.
telling we've been bonded and connected since we were 7.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's really important. So you have to reconcile with that when you don't want to carry it into the next episode.
Right. I think a better example than a bank account is if you share an email, because then every email that comes in, you both get to read it. Like your minds are shared, but then you need to actually contact that person and say, okay, you just need to contact Spock from now on.
This one's on you. Yeah.
Email.
It does make me very interested in what Strange New Worlds is going to do with this and how it maybe illustrates them drifting apart more and more. The only this one bugged me a little bit is the picture that Spock has.
Oh, of little 7-year-old.
A 7-year-old to bring. Why doesn't he have a newer picture of her?
Because he was reflecting on when they got together.
And
I'm
that's
sure he has a
exactly
newer picture. I'm sure he has one, but he was thinking back to the beginning is what I assume.
That's exactly what I thought as well. That's how I reconciled it in my brain, was he's going back to the beginning.
Yeah, yeah. It's like looking at your first date going, no, this is fine.
Yeah. I'm making the right call here.
It just so happens that you're not at the age of consent for really any race, I'm sure.
No, not at all. No one mentions it's to the death. Thanks, guys. That would have been really helpful information. And also, before you commit to a battle in Star Trek, make sure it's not to the death, please.
My next one is silly, but it's spilling soup, especially like really rich, purpley, reddish soup that's definitely going to stain the carpets and the walls. So I think it'd be like Spock is a dick to the cleaning robot or something like silly like that. But I kind of love it because at the start of like the next scene, I think it's when Kirk leaves Spock's room. It's still all over the wall.
It's still there. Kirk has left and returned to have a follow-up conversation. No one's cleaned it.
That would be my next sin is like cleaning robot has still not come to clean the wall. So just a bit silly.
The Starfleet Zumba robot still has Roomba robot hasn't like just sucked. There should have been something sucking on the wall.
Yeah.
Just like
yes.
Would have been amazing.
Yep.
Suddenly a tribble appears and just starts licking it up. Damn it, Kirk, let the man take his time off. Like, I know he's acting irrationally.
Jesus.
All the more reason to just respect his boundaries, sign off the time off. Like, he's a workaholic, and eventually workaholics crash. So just because he's never asked for time off before doesn't mean you don't respect the fact that he acknowledges that he needs it now.
Yeah. It's like, why not give him a shuttle? And I guess it's because they need to go at warp to get him to Vulcan before he
the shuttle's not going to get there in time. Yeah.
Because he's like degrading before our eyes or something. But Kirk uses his clear issues as a tool to get more information about why he wants to take a vacation.
What a dick. What a prying dick. That is the episode channeling itself through Kirk. That is not the act of a friend or a boss. I guess it's a good thing that I guess it's a good thing that McCoy had that paralyzing agent in his med bag. Why would he have that with him? Like, it's such a specific, it's not just a knockout drug, which we know that he uses to like disable people. This very specifically fakes death. Does he just always have that with him?
And I understand why you do now. It really can come in handy. It's like in Dungeons and Dragons with the feign death spell. You never, why would you ever have that until you realize, oh, no. this is great.
Yeah, this could really work.
This could work.
It's the opposite of the run away from the bear thing. Like, I don't have to run faster than the bear. I just have to run faster than you. It's the opposite, isn't it? I don't have to be the last person dead. I just have to look deader than anyone else, so I get left alone. We did have some good sins that were submitted via email. We usually do a live show, but we couldn't this week. So we had a few sins submitted ahead of time. Flyboy did a sin removal. This is a great one. So Lawrence Montaigne, the person who plays Ston, is the first person to play a Vulcan and a Romulan. And he beats Mark Leonard, who is the actor that plays Spock's dad, by 9 episodes, because Mark Leonard appears 9 episodes after this and also plays a Romulan in the same episode that Lawrence Montaigne plays a Romulan.
That's a lot.
Which is just like, it took me a second when I read that sin removal. I was like, wait, I did the math and I was like, that's amazing. That's great. That's like two of the most iconic Vulcans also played the 2 most iconic Romulans in the original series. That's a great little Trekkie trivia fact. I had one from Sci-Fi Brony, and Chapel is very rude to be walking into Spock's quarters unannounced when he is asleep.
Super
even
rude.
if it is to bring him soup. It's rude. Let the man rest.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone. I love this season so much. It was so fun to talk about that episode with.
Is our season coming to an end?
No,
is this the final one of our favorites?
No. That was present test. I'm enjoying this season of fan favorites. It is bringing up some episodes that I haven't seen in a while, and I completely get why they're fan favorites. And this one in particular is just the lore and the legend that is in this episode just cannot be understated.
And now I finally get to be in on the crew. I finally watched it.
You've done it. It's one of my favorite parts of this is introducing you to the really kind of just the really special corners of Star Trek. Next week's episode, like basically every episode we've done so far has been submitted by multiple people. We will be doing Star Trek Voyager again, and it's going to be season 4, episode 8, The Year of Hell, part 1. So this is going to be our first 2-parter. Going back to Voyager for, I think this is my second favorite 2-parter. This is so fun. I can't wait for you to watch this episode.
Both parts?
No, we're going to do part 1 next week and part 2 the following week because we are old and can't do marathons anymore. That's all for us from this week.
You want me to do it?
Nope. Yes, do it. Deneé, take us out.
With a neurotoxin?
No.
The episode just ends today with just silence.
Done.
Yeah, that's all for this week. Thank you guys for your submissions. You can email us captainspod@captainspod.com.
No, captainspod@cinemasins.com.
Yeah, that's our email address. You can also find us on Discord, discord.gg/CinemaSins. There is a little channel in there for the Captain's Pod folks. And we will see you next week. We will be live again, if all goes well. And hopefully it will.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. I'm Captain Ian, and it's the birds and the bees are not Vulcan from me.
And it's you're not a fish, Mr. Spock, from me.
We both had very similar quotes. That was amazing. Live long and Podsper.
Thanks for listening. Want to connect with the show? Our hailing frequencies are always open through captainspod@cinemasins.com. Like, comment, and subscribe on your podcast player of choice, and be sure to visit cinemasins.com.
Hello?
Hi. My thing was turned up way too loud.
What?
My sound was turned up way too loud and you blasted my ear canal.
Oh.
How dare you?
I'm so sorry.
Hi.
I'm ready. Let's talk about it. What you feel? Yeah, you ready?
Okay.
I'm ready. Let's go. Let's do this thing. Plenty of time. Just do it.
Do it.
What are we doing?
Oh, I'm gonna do the intro to the show.
Okay, do you mean crunch chips while you do it?
No. Why is my fucking window not renegotiating itself? There we go. Okay.
Why are you opening your window before doing a show? Won't that let the sounds of birds and come in?
No, not that. Oh, a browser window. Wait, did you think I'm an actual window? Oh no. It is.
It's like you know that I'm unwell when your first
Yeah.
reaction isn't to make fun of me. It's to go, oh, cute little boy.
Oh, poor
So-
Deneé.
Pat, pat, pat.
Pat, pat, pat. Let's reestablish reality for her. No, it is March and it is 7:21 p.m. There are no windows open in England.
Oh no.
This is not what one does.
So fresh and so clean. Do 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 do.
We're going to head over to the holodeck to watch the episode. We'll meet you in 10 Forward for a full debrief. Brah! Two to be out.
Is it that one? And then I just clicked on the episode and I see Spock holding a weapon. Oh my god, is it really time? Is it time to watch the one that everybody talks about and does a Is that it? And are we doing it? Is it? Tell me, is it?
We'll have to watch the episode and find out.